If you hold everything the world admires, power, money, technology, glory, yet wake up every morning feeling empty, what have you lost? This is not a story about Elon Musk creating a new kind of technology or a spectacular mission to Mars. It's not about stock prices, nor a groundbreaking speech at a global summit. This is the story of a silent week, a town not found on any map, and a blank book with not a single word, until Elon himself began to look inward. We begin in a place you wouldn't expect, a modern villa where everything is perfect, except for one thing: the feeling of being alive. A mysterious email, no sender, no clear motive, just a single line. The one thing money can't buy. And it led Elon Musk to Willow Creek, a place where no one knew who he was, and no one needed to. A week with no internet, no power, no name, just an old mirror, an empty book, a child with a rocket model made of duct tape, and an old librarian who posed a challenge. Can you live without needing to prove anything? And then, day by day, person by person, detail by detail, from a simple meal to the sound of a child's laughter, Elon learned lessons that Harvard never taught, that Silicon Valley never mentioned, and that success had never demanded he confront. From a CEO surrounded by spreadsheets, he became a man helping a child install solar panels. From a billionaire who forgot his niece's birthday, he began setting one offline day per week, just to listen until someone finished a full sentence. And when the empty book revealed key words: connection, purpose, community, balance, joy, time, he realized this wasn't a lesson to memorize. It was an invitation to begin life anew. According to transformational leadership experts, real change doesn't start with an organizational model. It begins when the leader is willing to dialogue with the emptiness inside. Elon did just that, not through technology, but through presence. And what's the most shocking part? The man who thought he knew how to change the world ultimately realized the world truly changes when we're brave enough to stop running and stand still long enough to hear a child ask, "Are you happy?" If you see a part of yourself in this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might be weary in their pursuit of success. Sometimes just one story is enough to open a new door. People often say Elon Musk has everything, and in many ways they're not wrong. He has a fortune touched by only a handful on this planet. He owns companies that reshape the future of entire industries. He has millions following his every move, every tweet, every word. He has personal AI experts serving his daily life, smart home systems that even Silicon Valley has only dreamed of. He has houses, cars, jets, rockets, and a vision reaching beyond Earth. But he doesn't have peace of mind. He doesn't have the calm of waking up without checking his phone. He doesn't have the warm gaze of someone when he walks into a room. He doesn't have a home that truly feels like home, a place where one doesn't need to be admired, just allowed to be oneself. Aspen Heights lay buried in snow, the villa perched on a hillside, surrounded by pine trees and strands of soft lights, seemingly designed not to hurt the night. The central control system welcomed him with a gentle female voice, just friendly enough not to be cold, yet robotic enough that no one would mistake it for a real person. "Welcome home, Mr. Musk. The lighting has been adjusted to the default psychological state, relaxation. I've prepared hot chamomile tea. Would you like me to play a background symphony?" Elon didn't respond. He simply took off his coat, walked down the long hallway paved with Italian-imported walnut wood, and placed his hand on a photo frame hanging on the wall. A picture taken long ago. 8-year-old Elon between his parents and younger brother, holding a cardboard and tape homemade spaceship. Everyone was smiling. A smile without posing, without pretense, without any camera in front. He stood silently before that photo for a long while. In a room filled with million-dollar art collections, this old frame was the only thing he touched every day, though he never spoke of it. Elon wasn't the nostalgic type, but sometimes he wondered what had been lost in the journey to this point. Something once so real, so pure, now gone. A soft vibration from his phone interrupted the thought. The screen lit up. 27 unread messages, 3 missed calls from 3 different time zones, 16 emails tagged urgent, one with a red label from the global strategy team. He put the phone down without opening any of them. Not because he was lazy, just that today the important thing wasn't in there. He stepped into the glass garden behind the house. Snow had blanketed the branches of Japanese bonsai trees, ordered from an ancient nursery in Kyoto. Beneath his feet was a path of polished black basalt stone, and in the middle of the garden stood a fountain sculpted by a European artist, whom Elon had paid over $2 million just to create a water flow that sounded like rain falling on maple leaves. When the system activated, the water rippled like soft music. He watched it, emotionless. Today, everything looked the same. Back in the living room, a new email had just arrived. Subject: the one thing you can't create. Sender: Alden Quinn. No avatar, no verified address. The content was just a few lines. If you still feel like something's missing, come to Willow Creek. 1 week. No security, no devices, no fame. Something is waiting for you. Below the line was a handwritten address, no GPS coordinates, not found on Google Maps, no links whatsoever. He frowned. Normally, this kind of message would have been filtered out by the spam system 3 layers deep before even reaching his inbox. But this one made it through, and it came on the very night he stood frozen before an old photo. Zaira, any information on someone named Alden Quinn? A second passed. Then the system replied, no matching results found in any database, including internal networks, social media, press, or academic directories. He read the email again. No enticing invitation, no mention of benefits, no tone of pleading. It felt like a call. Strange, rustic, unexplained. He turned back to look at the vast villa. The doors sat still like vaults of time. A 22-seat theater with no one watching. A kitchen with professional chefs but no one to dine with. A garage full of cars he hadn't driven in weeks. He looked down at his phone, then at the old photo frame. Finally, he spoke softly, almost like a prayer. Zaira, prep the Cybertruck. Just me. Don't tell anyone. Would you like me to log the trip? Number erase everything. Understood. Soon after, the vehicle sped off into the night. No music, no maps, no GPS. Just a handwritten note with the address from the email, placed on the passenger seat. The city lights slowly faded behind. Pine forests flanked the road, dense like silent witnesses. The snow was falling heavier. No cell signal, no internet, no familiar notification sounds. He didn't feel alarmed, only lighter. For the first time in months, his shoulders weren't dragged down by invisible gravity. As he turned onto a narrow gravel path leading into a low forest, a faded wooden sign appeared on the right. Willow Creek, where time waits for the heart. He slowed down. The truck rolled past dark wooden homes, small shops tucked tightly beside each other, rope-hung lamps lining the main street. No cameras, no gas stations, no supermarkets. Everything evoked a town never featured in modern urban plans. It felt like a forgotten part of the world. He stopped the vehicle in front of a gray stone house with an old tiled roof, fogged-up glass doors. A bronze sign read, Willow Creek Public Library. On the door, a small note was taped with clear adhesive. Mr. Musk, the answer lies inside. AQ. No one around. No security cameras. No doorbell. Elon looked at the note, showing no reaction. Then he gently pushed the wooden door. It opened without a sound. Inside was the scent of old books and ginger tea. The room was strangely warm. Tall shelves lined with hardbound books, wooden floors worn but spotless, golden light cast down from hanging lamps like moonlight on a winter night. At the far end of the room sat an elderly man reading, with long silver hair, bright eyes, wearing a gray sweater and a thick scarf, looking nothing like an ordinary person, but also unlike any businessman Elon had ever met. The man looked up. Welcome, Mr. Musk. I'm Alden Quinn, and I believe you finally arrived. Elon stood frozen at the threshold as if what had just happened hadn't truly occurred. The scent of ginger tea, the soft rustle of turning pages, the calm presence of a stranger who knew his name in a library with no name on any map. All of it hit a part of his once razor-sharp intuition and made it tremble. But the strangest thing wasn't the oddity of the situation. It was the quiet that seeped into his chest like a long breath after an incomplete night's sleep. The man named Alden Quinn closed the book in his hand, unhurried. He didn't get up, nor did he offer the kind of wave people give when greeting a billionaire or a symbol of the modern world. Instead, he simply looked at Elon with luminous eyes and spoke slowly, as if each word were a stone placed gently on the surface of a still lake. You arrived earlier than I expected, but I suppose sometimes people don't need more reasons when they've gone too long without an answer. Elon stepped in and closed the door behind him. No more wind, no more snow, no more tech, just wood, books, soft lighting, and something undefinable. The kind of presence one only feels when near those who don't need to say much to make you want to stay. He pulled out a chair and sat across from the man, resting both hands on his knees, a posture he had never used in any boardroom meeting. You know who I am? Alden nodded gently. I don't follow you on social media, if that's what you're worried about. But yes, I know. And I also know you didn't come here out of curiosity. Elon tilted his head slightly, his eyes filled with doubt. If not curiosity, then what? Emptiness, Alden said, as though the word carried no negative connotation. The kind of emptiness that nothing you've achieved can fill. I saw it in your eyes the moment you walked in. Elon didn't respond. He didn't confirm it, nor did he deny it. He could dismiss many things, rumors, theories, inaccurate reports, but not a truth spoken at the right moment, in the right way. Alden stood and walked to a low bookshelf near the window. He pulled out a thick brown leather-bound book with no title, no markings. He placed it in front of Elon so gently that it didn't even disturb the steam rising from the nearby teacup. This is what I want you to take, but not to read. It's blank. Elon looked at the book, flipped a few pages. Just as he'd said, all white, no text, no images, nothing. A blank notebook? Not exactly. It's not a journal, and it's not for ideas. It's a mirror, Alden said, looking at him. A mirror that only reveals itself when you're brave enough to look into it. It will show you what you need to see, not what you want. Everyone sees something different. With you, I don't know what it will say, but I believe it will say something none of your smart homes, orbiting satellites, or fluctuating stocks can ever tell you. Elon gave a soft laugh, half believing, half not. Sounds like an expensive spiritual gimmick. Alden didn't laugh along. He looked at Elon the way a teacher looks at a student who just asked a question too simple. If it were a gimmick, you wouldn't be here. If it were expensive, it wouldn't have made its way to me. Elon placed his hand on the soft leather cover of the book. A strange sensation ran down his spine. Not fear, not curiosity, but something deeper, as if his hand had touched something invisible. And what am I supposed to do with it? Stay here. 1 week, no phone, no name, no credentials. No one knows who you are, and no one cares. He pulled from the drawer a key, along with an old paper map marked in red ink. A small cabin near the woods. It has what you need. No TV, no Wi-Fi, no virtual assistants. Just a kitchen, a bed, books, and time. Each night, open the book once. If it's still blank, then it's not time yet. Elon touched the key. The metal was cold. The feeling was real. A feeling he rarely experienced in a world of silicon and code. And if after a week it's still blank, then you can return to your world. No one's keeping you here. But if something does appear, then you won't be able to return the same. Elon stood, taking the book, the map, and the key. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't analyze the risks. He didn't outline benefits or consider the possibility of deception. He didn't ask, why are you doing this? A part of him was fed up with reasons. Another part, quieter, purer, had just been stirred awake by the amber glow of that little library. As he stepped outside, the cold wind slapped his face like a gentle reminder that yes, this was real. He drove the truck following the map to the western edge of town. The road narrowed. No streetlights, no houses, just trees lining both sides, frozen canopy overhead. The house appeared in a small clearing. Wooden roof, porch swing, lace curtains on the windows. No lights on, the door slightly ajar. He stepped out, opened the door softly as if not to wake himself. Inside it was impossibly simple. Wooden chairs, a wood-burning stove, a small dining table, a single bed with a thick wool blanket. No devices, no screens, no signal. He lit the stove. The fire crackled. Light danced on the wooden walls. He sat in the chair by the table, placed the book on it, and opened the first page. Still white. He turned a few more. All blank. Nothing. No name. No greeting. No secrets revealed. Nothing at all. Just a blank space waiting for something to happen. Elon closed the book and set it on the wooden shelf next to the bed. Then he lay down, without setting an alarm. For the first time in years, he had no idea what he would do tomorrow. And strangely, that thought didn't make him anxious. It only made him want to sleep a little longer. The first light of day slipped through the window curtain, falling across the wooden roof of the small cabin where Elon still lay motionless, eyes open, but not truly awake. No alarm, no schedule notifications, no reminders from virtual assistants. Only the sound of a woodpecker tapping on a tree outside, the wind slipping through the planks, and the warm scent of fading embers from the wood stove. He couldn't remember the last time he woke up because of natural light. In his world, people didn't rise with the sun, but for a meeting in another time zone, a pending decision, or a stock that had just risen or crashed. He sat up, wrapped himself in a blanket, pulled on his coat, and stepped out onto the porch. The sky was a quiet blue. White clouds hovered above snow-covered trees like they had been painted in watercolors. In the distance, the town revealed itself only through a few rooftops peeking past the treetops. Thin smoke trailing from low chimneys. No traffic, no billboards, no honking. Everything was so still, he could hear the crunch of snow beneath his boots as he stepped down the porch stairs. He didn't know where he was going. There was no reason to go anywhere. But his feet began to move, following a narrow dirt path into town, past a fence woven from willow branches, snow-covered gardens, and a wooden bridge over a shallow stream. He didn't bring his phone. Couldn't even remember if he'd charged it. The only thing in his head now was the rhythm of his footsteps and the refreshing chill on his cheeks. When he reached the town's central park, a little girl was stumbling across the snowy lawn, arms full of bamboo sticks and tangled string. Her hair was messy, cheeks red from the cold, lips pressed tightly together in focused concentration, as if she were carrying out the most important mission in the world. Beside her sat an elderly woman knitting a scarf, quietly watching but never interfering. Elon stood behind a wooden fence, observing in silence. The girl laid the sticks on the ground, spread out colorful paper, cut strips with small scissors, and glued them to the frame. The kite was clearly homemade, imperfect, even crooked, but each move she made had a strange sense of decisiveness. She tied the string, tested a few steps, then waited for wind. A gentle breeze blew and she ran. The kite lifted off the ground for about 2 steps, then nosedived back into the snow. She looked at it without disappointment, only tilted her head as if analyzing the cause of a technical failure. Elon smiled. For some reason he didn't fully understand. He stepped closer. "I think the angle between the bamboo sticks is a bit off. If you adjust the wings, it might fly higher." The girl looked up at him, eyes black and bright like charcoal, then gave a small nod. "I know, but I don't know how to fix it right. My hands are too small." Elon knelt down, took a folding knife from his pocket, carefully trimmed the skewed part of the bamboo, and used a paper clip to secure the joint. He said nothing else, letting his actions speak for him. She watched him work in silence, as if weighing whether this man was someone she could trust. When he finished and handed her the adjusted kite, she took it, narrowed her eyes. "You know how to make kites?" Elon looked up, faintly smiled. "Number, but I used to like them. Made a few, a long time ago." She nodded, asked no more, and returned to the field. This time, when the wind picked up, the kite sprang up as if it had life. It soared higher, circled, then climbed again. The girl shrieked with delight. "It's flying! It's flying!" The elderly woman at the edge smiled kindly, then looked at Elon with eyes that seemed to have just witnessed something not seen in a long time. "Her name's Leah," she said. "She doesn't talk much, but she remembers things for a long time. Be careful. Elon nodded slightly, eyes still following the kite in the sky. For the first time in years, he felt something that wasn't tied to profit formulas or supply chains. Just a child's laugh, a handmade kite, and a stranger who didn't ask who he was. That afternoon, Leah led him all around the park. She showed him where lavender bloomed thick in the summer, so dense butterflies couldn't find space to land. The old willow whose leaves fell like rain in autumn. A stone pedestal engraved with the name of the person who laid the first stone to build the library. A tree split by lightning, half dead, yet still living. Every small detail came with a story. She didn't tell them to impress, but to share. As if, somehow, Elon had become someone who could understand why a cracked stone bench was better than a brand new one. Night fell. Leah waved goodbye, not too familiar, but not distant either. He returned to the wooden house, lit the fire, brewed tea from a pouch of leaves left on the shelf. He didn't feel tired or rushed or tempted to check his messages. He just opened the book Alden had given him, turned the first page. He expected the same blank as last night, but in the middle of the page was a single word, written in delicate ink as if by hand. Connection. He stared at the word for a long time, not out of surprise, but because it didn't feel foreign. Connection. The thing he thought was the pillar of the world he built. Social networks, satellites, telecommunications, self-driving cars, turned out to be what he lacked the most. He had connected every device, every market, every city. But how long had it been since he connected with a person, not through machines, but through true presence? When he closed the book and placed it on the wooden shelf beside the bed, the night had already swallowed the windows. In the silence, Leah's laughter still echoed in his mind. A homemade kite, a few bamboo sticks, a nameless afternoon, and a single word emerging in the once empty book: connection. He exhaled slowly. For the first time, he didn't try to understand it with logic. He simply let himself feel it. And for the first time, that feeling was enough. If this story stirred something in you, even just a little, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this journey with someone who might be quietly searching for a deeper kind of connection. Sometimes all it takes is one story to open up everything we've been missing. The next morning, when Elon opened the door and stepped out, the scent of last night's snow still lingered in the air. Crisp, pure, nearly indescribable. The last yellow leaves of winter scattered across the doorstep. In his old world, each morning began with a flurry of data updates, Asian market news, staffing changes, new moves from competitors. But here, the only information he needed was, is the sky blue? Which way are the birds flying? And does this deep breath feel lighter than the day before? He walked down into town, but this time didn't head toward the park. Instead, he followed the opposite direction, toward a narrow dirt path through the woods he had noticed briefly last night on his way back from the library. The winding trail bent beneath overhanging branches, light filtering through the leaves like nature's own form of calligraphy. He carried nothing but the small notebook Alden had once told him. Write in it every day, even just one line. The path led to a small clearing in the forest, where a dark wood cabin stood, low-roofed, moss-covered walls, as if time had forgotten it. On the porch were wicker baskets filled with all kinds of mushrooms, oyster, shiitake, reishi, enoki, carefully sorted and hung from wooden hooks like living biological specimens. A tall, lean man with salt and pepper beard, wearing a waxed canvas coat, was flipping trays of mushrooms laid out in the shade. He didn't look surprised to see Elon, didn't ask anything, just nodded as if he'd been expecting him for some time. "You're just in time," he said in a deep, unhurried voice. "I could use a pair of hands to flip the substrate." Elon frowned slightly. "Substrate?" The man pointed to the trays of soil, straw, and wood shavings. "Where the mushrooms are born. Flip them gently, don't break the mycelium. Mushrooms don't like being hurt." Elon looked at his hands that had signed billion-dollar deals, piloted spacecraft, now about to dig into damp earth and musty mulch. He said nothing, simply knelt and began. They worked in silence for nearly an hour. No background music, no machines, just falling leaves and the wind threading through the wooden slats. After inspecting a few trays, the man turned and said, "I'm Ezra. I used to work in genetic research. Then I chose mushrooms." Elon didn't ask why. He didn't feel the need. But Ezra continued, as if reading his mind. "I left the lab the day my analysis got licensed by pharma companies for a sum that could have let me do nothing for the rest of my life. But that morning I didn't feel joy. I looked at the mycelium growing slowly in the dark, growing in silence, growing in decay, and realized I wanted to understand life more than I wanted to profit from it." Elon flipped another tray, this time more slowly. "So, what did mushrooms give you?" Ezra smiled. "They gave me questions." Silence fell again. The sun rose higher, shifting the shadows of the trees. Lunch was 2 slices of dark bread spread with nut butter and a few pan-seared mushrooms. Elon devoured it, not because it tasted amazing, but because, for the first time in a long time, his body was truly burning energy. During the meal, Ezra talked about how mushrooms need darkness to grow. They can't thrive under harsh light. They need decay and quiet. Just like the mind, he said, sometimes to understand something, you have to go into the dark, where there's no flash, no spotlight, not even expectation. Elon placed his hand on the notebook, opened a page, and wrote in tiny letters, "Maybe I've lived too long under the lights." That afternoon, Ezra led him into a small back room where he cultivated new mushroom strains. There was no artificial light, only a faint glow from a crack in the door. Glass jars lined the shelves, each one a universe of its own. Strands of mycelium intertwined like blood vessels, moving slowly but surely. Mushrooms don't have eyes, but they know where they're going. They don't need to see. They need time. Elon stood quietly before one jar. Inside, the white threads of mycelium stretched like silk, gradually spreading across the dark substrate. He'd never seen anything that looked so fragile and yet so resilient. Suddenly, his throat tightened. Not from emotion, but because the silence was now revealing things he had long ignored. He left Ezra's cabin by late afternoon. Before he walked away, Ezra handed him a small pouch of dried mushrooms and said, "Cook them in hot water." Not to heal, just to remember the taste of simplicity. Elon nodded. He didn't ask anything more, didn't promise to return, but deep down, he knew he would. Back at the small cabin, he boiled water, sliced the mushrooms in. The water slowly changed color. The aroma rose, not strong, not spicy, just a bit sharp, like a memory he hadn't touched in a long time. He sipped and then opened the book. This time, beneath connection, a second word had appeared. Purpose. No flourish, no explanation, no famous quote. Just one word. But Elon looked at it the way someone might look at a map after being lost in the forest for years. Something simple, yet worth more than 1,000 slides about mission, vision, or long-term strategy. He wrote in the notebook, "Maybe purpose doesn't come from what we create, but from who we become in the process." Night fell. Elon sat before the fireplace. For the first time, instead of thinking about system updates, he thought about mushrooms, about the white threads growing in the dark, about how sometimes the most enduring things are the ones we can't see with our eyes. The 5th day in Willow Creek began with the scent of toasted bread drifting through the air and the gentle chime of wind bells swaying at the window. Elon woke without a sense of urgency or weight. No more rushing to choose between a meeting with Berlin or patching through to Cape Canaveral. He hadn't set an alarm, yet didn't feel out of control. The schedule for today was no schedule at all. He brought a warm flask of tea and an old thermos left for him on the kitchen shelf, a small gift from a neighbor whose name he hadn't quite remembered yet. Walking toward the town center, he noticed things he once overlooked. Hand-painted signs on shop fronts, baskets of paper flowers hanging by wooden window frames, elderly people reading under the soft morning sun without any rush. On the school wall, a large phrase faded in watercolor read, "Do small things with great heart." Elon stopped when he heard noise coming from behind a row of red brick buildings. Not the loud clang of a factory, but children's voices, excited, mixed with laughter and the clatter of tools. He stepped closer, pausing by a slightly open window where a small classroom was in session. Inside were about 20 kids, aged 10 to 14, hunched over tables, assembling recycled materials into solar-powered toy cars. Their teacher was a young woman with red hair, round glasses, and a warm voice. She guided and encouraged, never scolded or commanded. Remember, the goal isn't the fastest car. It's the most durable, the most clever. Elon watched for a while, then turned to leave. But the teacher noticed him and called out, "Excuse me, are you looking for someone?" "No, I was just passing by. This looked interesting." "Wonderful," she smiled, walking toward the door. "I'm Tessa. We're getting ready for Innovation Showcase Day. The kids are building solar-powered car models. Would you like to come in and take a look?" Elon nodded and stepped into the room like a stranger entering a world that once belonged to him, but had long been forgotten. He didn't introduce his name. In Willow Creek, he had learned he didn't need to. You could help Leo, the boy in the corner. Very smart, but a bit withdrawn. Leo was a small, messy-haired boy with black-rimmed glasses sliding down his nose. He sat alone, fitting wheels onto a car frame made from can lids and plastic packaging. Elon knelt beside his desk. "Hi, I'm Elon," he said softly. Leo didn't look up, only muttered, "I know." Then after a pause, he added, "I saw your name on a circuit board in last year's assignment." Elon smiled. "I see. Having trouble with something?" Leo pointed at a wire. "It doesn't stay steady when the motor spins. I think the chassis is too light, but if I make it heavier, the solar panel can't keep up." Elon examined the simple but thoughtful design. The kid clearly had sharp logic. "Have you tried increasing the wheel's contact surface with the ground? Might reduce the vibration." Leo hesitated, then nodded. They worked together, testing and adjusting. A firmer wire, a shorter strut, a diagonal bracket. 2 hours passed, unnoticed. Elon didn't check the time. Leo never asked his name again. They worked like two builders, not caring for titles, just solving a problem. When class ended, Tessa approached with 2 cups of hot cocoa. "He doesn't talk much to anyone, but today he told me you helped him fix the drive axle. That's a big step." Elon took a sip, warming his hands. He watched the kids run outside, testing their cars under the soft sun. Leo didn't run. He stood back, watching, and smiled when his car rolled the farthest. No one cheered, no prizes were given, just a small smile, so real it couldn't be faked. That evening, back in the cabin, Elon made tea and opened the book. Beneath the 2 previous words, a new one had appeared: community. He placed his hand over the word, lingering. Memories of the early startup days came rushing back. Nights soldering circuit boards with teammates, splitting instant noodles, laughing like mad when a line of code finally worked. When colleagues weren't employees, but companions. When a small team could share a giant dream. When trust was natural, not contractual. Elon wrote in his notebook, "I used to have a community. Then I turned them into employees. Maybe I gave up too much." He sat still before the fire, eyes heavy. The word community didn't just describe a place. It described a way of choosing to live together, without titles, without payrolls, just with presence and willingness to listen. Like how Leo had looked at him today and let him touch the car. A trust that needed no name. That night, Elon went to bed without turning on his phone. He only opened the small window by his bed to listen to the wind. He thought about a classroom, a quiet boy, a car powered by light, and a single word: community. When the morning sunlight was blocked by heavy gray clouds, Elon was in the kitchen, pouring hot water into a cup of ginger tea and getting ready to head out when the wind howled through the window like a vague warning. From the window of the small house, he saw the clouds swirling in strange spirals. No rain yet, but something in the air. A shift approaching. Before he could leave, there was a sharp knock at the door. It was Tessa, hair messy, wool coat soaked, holding a bag of first aid supplies. The town hall roof's leaking badly. The rain's coming. The kids are clearing out the classroom. We need people to help fix it. Ezra said you know how to use a hammer. Elon didn't answer with words. He simply grabbed his coat, gloves, and followed her through streets already growing wet. The rain hadn't poured yet, but was steady, and the wind had picked up. When they reached the town hall in the central square, about 20 people had already gathered, young and old. Quinn, the man Elon had met during the market meeting, was up a ladder inspecting the peeled-back tin roof. Below, Maya held a thick coil of rope, while Leah clutched a bucket full of nails. No one gave orders, but everyone knew what needed to be done. Elon joined the flow easily now, without hesitation. He took a hammer, worked with Quinn to build a temporary scaffold, removed damaged roofing panels, and replaced them with wooden planks salvaged from the supply shed. The wind stung his face, rain soaked through his jacket, hands slipped on wet beams, but no one complained. "I've built factories 100 times bigger than this town hall," Elon said while driving a nail, "but I've never actually built a roof myself." Quinn laughed heartily. "That's the problem with people like us. We know how to build everything, but forget what it feels like to hold it up ourselves." By midday, as the rain began to ease, the group paused for a break. Inside the hall, people gathered around long tables, sharing sandwiches, apple juice, and bowls of hot porridge brought in by locals. Elon sat next to an older woman, Annette, the caretaker of the hall. "I've lived here since before that roof was put up," she said, rubbing her rough palms. "It's not perfect, but it keeps the rain out, and every time it breaks, people come together to fix it. No contractors, no bids. We just have each other." Elon looked around. Part-time carpenters, single mothers, kids cleaning up scraps, an artist, an old teacher, a newlywed couple. All with nothing in common on the surface, yet moving like one unified body. Each of them, a living cell in the immune system of this community. No one asked if he was Elon Musk. No one talked about Tesla, SpaceX, stocks, or AI. They only cared whether the roof would hold tonight and whether the children would have a place to perform during the weekend festival. When the rain stopped completely, they returned to the roof, securing the final panels one by one. The sky began to clear, and the late afternoon sun shone down on the newly replaced boards. Still damp, but solid. Elon climbed down the ladder, arms sore, shoulders stiff, but with a faint smile on his face. Not because he'd conquered a market, but because he'd helped a group of strangers complete something necessary. On the way back, Leah rode past on her bike, stopped and said, "Mom says you're better than the people on TV because you weren't afraid to climb a real roof." Elon didn't know how to respond. He just patted her head. No medals, no applause, just a small acknowledgement. Too genuine to be staged. Back in the little house, he changed clothes, lit the fire, and opened the book. A new word had appeared below community. Balance. Balance. A word that seemed simple but had always eluded him through years of sprinting across the tech race. In Elon's world, there was no room for balance, only speed, competition, and relentless pressure. But today, when he used his hands to keep a roof from collapsing, when he shared a meal with people who had no idea who he was, he began to feel a different kind of balance. Not between work and life, but between giving and receiving, between accomplishment and humility, between a big name and a small act. He wrote in the notebook, "Maybe I don't need to leave the old world. Maybe I just need to learn how to walk through it without being swept away by it. Maybe truly I never understood what a roof meant until I had to help hold one up with people who had no titles." That night, he slept dreamlessly. Every sound disappeared. Only the quiet remained. The quiet of a man relearning how to stand firm with his own hands in a world that didn't care who he was. After the rain, Willow Creek appeared like a canvas washed clean of dust. Tree branches shimmered with early droplets, streets damp and gleaming with reflected sky, like a thin layer of mirror stretched underfoot. The air smelled of fresh grass, wet wood, and something faint, the scent of preparation, of joy not yet spoken. Leah knocked on Elon's wooden cabin just as the sun rose. She wore a wide-brimmed hat dotted with color and held a bundle of multicolored pennant strings. "Today's the Moonlight Festival," she said without a greeting. "You have to come. I need help tying lights." Elon, in a navy sweater and still a bit sleepy, smiled gently. "You said I have to?" Leah nodded firmly. "No one gets to miss it, unless they break a leg." The town was already stirring. Along the main roads, people hung moon-shaped paper lanterns, painted patterns on shop doors, raised makeshift wooden stages, and laid long tables with checkered cloths. Elon was assigned to string lights between trees and flagpoles, a task requiring climbing, measuring, and a bit of aesthetic sense. Tessa handed him a small box of battery-powered LED lights. We don't use electricity for the festival, only self-made light. Like joy, it has to come from within. As the sun dipped low, the town square transformed into something out of a storybook. Lanterns swayed like a sea of giant fireflies, casting a warm glow across every face. There were no grand stages, no loudspeakers, no advertising boards. Just a simple wooden sign hanging between two pine columns. Moonlight Festival, honoring kinship, joy, and the light in each of us. The first performance was a children's play directed by Tessa's class. Maya, the little girl Elon once helped build a bottle rocket, appeared as the moon, dressed in tin foil and a white skirt adorned with taped-on stars. She stepped to center stage, holding a small glimmering mirror, and declared proudly, "I have no light of my own, but I know how to reflect joy from the sun into gentleness for the earth." Applause erupted from the crowd. Elon clapped too, and realized he was doing more than clapping. He was smiling, a real smile, not staged, not for cameras, with no PR agenda behind it. He smiled like a father watching his child be brave on stage, like a friend seeing someone overcome fear. After the play, people gathered at the long tables. The food already waiting: whole grain bread, pumpkin soup, roasted potatoes, persimmon jam, pickled plums, and fragrant baked fruit pies. Elon sat next to Serena, Maya's mother, and Quinn's family. Serena poured him a mug of warm apple cider and said, "I heard Maya calls you Uncle Elon of the Light." He chuckled. "I thought she didn't know my name." Serena tilted her head and smiled knowingly. Every child remembers the name of the person who made them smile. Music began. A local band played folk tunes on violins, hand drums, and harmonicas. People danced in a circle, holding hands, moving in slow rhythms that gradually quickened. Elon thought of staying seated, but Maya ran up and pulled him by the arm. "No sitting. Festivals are for standing up." He couldn't say no, and didn't want to. He joined the circle, moving like someone relearning the language of the body after years of typing and signing papers. No one laughed at him. No one corrected him harshly. When he stepped out of rhythm, someone gently adjusted his hand. When he turned the wrong way, Maya wrinkled her nose and pulled him back on track. Under the soft yellow light, in a whirlwind of laughter and rhythm, Elon was no longer a CEO, inventor, or public figure. He was just a person among people, alive, smiling, breathing. Near midnight, the festival quieted. A bonfire was lit in the town square. Everyone brought a small piece of paper with something they were grateful for, tossing it into the flames as a ritual of closure and beginning. Elon sat on the steps, holding a blank slip, truly unsure. Tessa sat beside him, handing him a small pen. "You don't have to write something grand, just something that makes you feel real." Elon thought, then wrote 3 words: Maya's smile. He folded the paper, stepped to the fire, and dropped it in. It flared briefly. A soft light, fleeting, but enough to mark the moment. Back at the cabin, Elon opened the book on the table. Beneath the previous words, connection, purpose, community, balance, a 5th word had appeared, like the last glimmer after a festival: joy. He placed his hand on the word and exhaled, not from exhaustion, but from the realization that, over all these years, he had known glory, conquered markets, and pushed the edges of technology. But joy, the simple, fleeting, honest kind, like a child's smile, was something he'd lost somewhere along the way. Elon wrote in his notebook, "Maybe I was wrong to think joy was just a reward after success. Turns out it's a form of success, and sometimes the purest one." That night, he opened the cabin window and sat silently by the hearth. Outside, the lanterns still hung, swaying gently in the breeze, casting their soft, humble light, real enough to still a person's heart. And somewhere high above, the full moon was smiling back at a man who was learning how to smile again, like a child. If this story lit something inside you, no matter how small, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder of what joy really feels like. Sometimes all it takes is a smile and a little moonlight. That morning, the sunlight wasn't bright as usual, but soft, just enough to filter through the mist draping the hills. Willow Creek wasn't noisy after a night of festival. The town seemed to breathe slower, rocking itself gently in its familiar rhythm. The shuffle of elders walking to market, the little clicks of children's bicycles, the smell of fresh bread wafting from the corner bakery. And in a wooden cabin on the town's edge, Elon Musk sat quietly by the window, hand resting on an open notebook, pen untouched, coffee untouched. There was nothing urgent, no emails, no reminders, no calls from Berlin or Texas. But it was precisely this emptiness that made him uneasy. A knock on the door. Not rushed, not loud. It was Finley. The librarian still wore his old blue-gray sweater, carrying a small wooden box. "We need to talk," Finley said softly, not waiting for an answer, as he stepped inside and placed the box on the table. "The book is almost finished." Elon looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've seen enough to make a choice." Finley opened the box. Inside was a small, simple hourglass made of ebony wood, its sand falling in steady rhythm. "You have 2 days. After that, the book will stop recording. It doesn't keep its promise once you've returned to the old world." Elon was silent. Deep down, he knew Finley was right. Every time he opened the book, it reflected something. It wasn't magic. It was a quiet mirror showing whoever looked into it. And a mirror, like time, only reflects when we stop long enough to truly see. "And today," Finley continued, eyes still bright as ever, "you won't see anyone. No Maya, no Quinn, no Leo, no one in town. Why? Because silence is the final lesson." Finley stood up. "Stillness doesn't come from the absence of noise, but from ceasing resistance to yourself." Finley walked out. The room remained filled with only the soft wind and the sound of falling sand. Elon sat still for a long time. He picked up the book, now nearly full, the 5 words already etched: connection, purpose, community, balance, and the most recent, joy, like a whisper after the festival. No blank pages left, but no answers yet either. He stepped outside with no path in mind. His feet led him up a hill behind the town, one he hadn't explored during the past week. The hill rose gently, covered in dry grass and patches of fern. At the summit, he looked down over Willow Creek. The small rooftops, the thin chimney smoke, the people now strangely familiar. Each one a small chapter, a piece of the journey now behind him. He sat on the damp earth, pulled out his notebook, and began to write. "I used to think that to see myself clearly, I had to stand on a big stage. Turns out I had to step away from the lights. I used to treat silence as a pause between 2 meetings. But here, silence is the only place where I can hear myself." That entire day, Elon saw no one. He spoke to no one, took no notes, read no news. He simply walked along the stream, past Ezra's now quiet garden, pausing before bare maple trees preparing for spring. And in each of those moments, he did nothing, except feel. When the sun dipped behind the mountain, he returned to the cabin. On the table, the book waited. Elon lit a lamp, poured tea, opened the book, for the first time, without expectation. And at the very end, one final line had appeared. A sentence, brief, with no punctuation. "The one thing money cannot buy is..." He turned the page. Blank. No words. No hints. No conclusion. A stillness filled the room, as if the whole world was holding its breath. And then, from somewhere deep within, the question rose. Am I ready to live a different life? One not built on the familiar peak? Elon placed his hand on the book, eyes closed. Images flickered. Leah laughing in the sunlight. Maya on stage. Leo raising an eyebrow as his car started to roll. Quinn shaking hands after fixing the roof. Serena under the apple tree, painting galaxies in watercolor. Tessa reading by the window. And Finley, who never pushed, only invited. None of them asked who he was. None of them required proof. They simply accepted him, or more precisely, helped him accept himself. That night he wrote nothing more. He only opened the cabin window and sat silently, watching moonlight spill across the grass outside the porch. No notifications, no strategies, no headlines, No Elon Musk, only Elon, in the truest sense of the word. The last morning in Willow Creek arrived like a gentle touch to the eyelids. Elon woke not to an alarm, but to the sound of a sparrow tapping at the windowsill. The sunlight, honey-soft, filtered through thin curtains and landed on the book still resting quietly on the table. Beside it sat Finley's hourglass. The sand had long since settled. Time in this town didn't run. It drifted, slow, soft, almost merciful. Elon brewed a pot of tea, a ritual he never imagined he'd acquire. His hands now performed simple tasks that used to be handed to assistants or automated. Setting the kettle over fire, listening to it boil, pouring into a ceramic cup, sitting in stillness. A week ago, those would have been wastes of time. Now they marked the beginning of a day lived in full. 3 knocks at the door. No hesitation, Finley stepped in, as if today had been decided long ago. "Are you ready?" Elon didn't ask. "For what?" He simply nodded. They walked together to the library, the place where Elon had first arrived in the pale glow of morning, weighed down by an empire, and now returned with a lighter mind, but a heart full of unspoken things. The library was as quiet as ever. Finley walked straight in, opened an old wooden cabinet, and pulled out a small linen-wrapped box, placing it on the reading table. He said nothing more, only nudged it gently toward Elon. "The final gift." Elon opened it. Inside was an old mirror, framed in scratched wood, the glass slightly fogged with age spots. Not an antique, not a smart device. But when he looked into it, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. His own face, unguarded, unlit, untouched by spotlight. "This is the only object," Finley said slowly, "that no one else can use for you. It reflects just one person, and only when that person dares to look deeply." Elon nodded quietly. He didn't ask why it wasn't gold, why it wasn't tech, why it wasn't something worthy of him, because now he understood. Not all gifts can be handed over by others. Some have to be opened by awakening. Finley turned and walked to the shelves, retrieving Foundation, the old copy Elon had once borrowed, and placed it next to the mirror. "I'm not asking you to stay," he said, "and I'm not telling you to leave. I just want you to know, what you found here, it can go with you if you choose to carry it." Elon looked up. For the first time since he'd arrived, he asked, "Will there be a day I lose what I found here?" Finley smiled, a rare smile, not philosophical, just that of an old man who's lived. "Only if you forget. Willow Creek doesn't live on any map, Elon. It lives in memory and habit. You can return anytime, as long as you remember to pause and breathe. That's the real door." As Elon stepped out of the library, the afternoon light had turned golden. The people he'd bonded with over the week, Tessa, Quinn, Serena, Maya, Leo, Ezra, had gathered in the small town square. It wasn't radiant like the festival, just present. Maya ran up and handed him a folded paper shaped like a rocket. "This is so you remember to fly, but not far, just right." Quinn gave him a final handshake. "Your old world needs you, but maybe it needs this new version of you even more." Serena handed him a small painting, a quiet forest and a lone man under the moonlight. He said little, made no promises to return, gave no speeches. He simply hugged each one, firm, honest hugs, like those between old friends who didn't need words. Then he turned to his vehicle, started the engine. No security detail, no media, no cameras, just a man leaving a quiet place. On the road back, Elon didn't turn on GPS. He knew the way, but more importantly, he knew how to return if he needed to. Back at the villa, the house once hailed as a symbol of achievement, he felt an echo of emptiness from the polished walls. Everything was still there: tech, comfort, security, robotic assistance. But something was missing: people. He placed the gifts on his desk: Leo's model, Serena's painting, Finley's book, the small mirror. Simple things, but each one a reminder that value doesn't lie in objects. It lies in the feeling they awaken. His phone buzzed relentlessly. 168 unread emails, 34 rescheduled meetings. Jada had video called 3 times. A foreign CEO messaged, "Can you jump on a call to discuss the satellite issue in Jakarta?" Elon silenced the phone, sat down, opened the blank book, and for the first time in a week, the final page now held a complete line. The one thing money cannot buy is time. Not time to build rockets or empires, but time given freely to others. In connections, you find what you were searching for. He read it again and again. No note-taking, no analysis. He read it with his heart. The villa door didn't open with a security code or a fingerprint. It opened by a human hand. Elon stepped inside, not slowly, not hastily. He carried no luggage but an old leather backpack containing a notebook, a few clothes, and a set of priceless gifts. An old mirror, a blank book, tomato seeds, a model rocket, a painting of a galaxy, and a scrap of paper that read, "Maya's Smile." The house was just as before, still cold, still perfect, still emotionless. The AI system activated instantly, lighting up rooms, playing ambient music, listing 27 pending items. Elon cut in, "Shut everything down." Immediately, silence returned. The villa, once a fortress, now resembled an echo chamber, reflecting the emptiness of its owner. He pulled out the notebook and scribbled a line. "This place has everything except me." The next day, Elon showed up at the weekly meeting at SpaceX. The leadership team was nearly stunned. No slides, no laptop, no KPI check. He opened with a strange question. "We can send people to Mars, but the real question is, will they still be people or just machines?" No one quite knew where he was going, but his eyes, his voice, and the way he listened brought the room to a quiet stillness. He shifted focus from speed to depth. It wasn't just what we can do, but who we become in the process. He ordered a halt to projects that didn't create real value for the community. Instead, investments were redirected into open access educational programs where children could learn to build rockets out of plastic bottles, starting in schools without labs. Weeks later, Elon rocked the finance world by announcing a monthly offline day mandatory for all senior staff across his companies. No emails, no meetings, no strategy. "A day to remember you're human, not just a title," he said. At first, many pushed back, but then productivity rose, stress dropped, creativity bloomed. Most of all, people began to talk to one another like people again. Elon returned to his old life, but not in the old way. He still led, still made decisions, still innovated, but he no longer slept 3 hours a night, no longer brought his laptop to the dinner table, no longer turned every vacation into a mobile boardroom. Now and then, he'd fly to small towns. No advance notice, no media, just to sit in a middle school classroom and talk about the joy of watching a small idea take flight. Once a boy asked, "Do you regret working so much?" He replied, "No, but I regret thinking that work was the only thing that made me real." He still spoke at global tech summits, but now when he stood on stage, he talked about time, not in chip speed, but in human presence. "Where are we rushing to?" he asked a silent hall in Tokyo, "if we forget who's beside us along the way?" A year after leaving Willow Creek, he returned. No announcement, no one knew. But when he stepped into the town square, Leah, now a little taller, ran to him before he said a word. "You're back," she said, hugging him like spring itself had arrived. Maya walked out from her classroom, not surprised, not overwhelmed. She simply handed him a drawing, a scene from the festival, with a man dancing awkwardly in the circle. Elon laughed, this time as naturally as breathing. He saw Finley again in the library. Same sweater, same eyes. But this time, Finley was the one who asked, "Have you found it yet?" Elon didn't answer with words. He placed the book on the table, now full, no longer blank, no longer cryptic, but he didn't open it. He simply said, "I carry it with me every day." Finley nodded. "That's enough." When Elon left town again, he didn't feel sad, because now he knew. Willow Creek wasn't a place, it was a way of living, and anywhere people look at each other with honest eyes, share without asking for return, listen without interrupting. There, Willow Creek exists. The once blank book, now filled, still rests on his desk among hundreds of projects. But whenever he feels himself slipping, he turns to the final page. The one thing money cannot buy is time. Not time for conquest, but time shared freely. To remember we were never machines. In that, we become human again. If this story moved you, grounded you, or helped you remember something true, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone navigating the same questions. Because sometimes the greatest innovation isn't a new invention, it's becoming more human. When Elon walked into the boardroom of the philanthropic foundation he had created, a body long regarded as the PR-optimized arm of his empire, the executives were ready with their usual slide decks, metrics of impact efficiency, donor growth, and social media strategy for next year's campaigns. But this time, Elon said nothing for the first 20 minutes. He just sat there, hand resting on an old leather notebook, eyes still as a lake before a storm. Eventually, as the room quieted from confusion, he spoke. "We're funding a lot of initiatives," he said, "but how many of them actually touch a life?" No one answered. Not because they didn't know, but because the question was too real for corporate language. "We're changing course," he continued. "No more funding beautiful ideas that are miles away from people. From now on, we start from the ground up. Things we can actually touch. A classroom, a garden, a leaking roof, a teacher without a chalkboard." They expected Elon to kick off with a global strategy, a flagship campaign, but instead he pulled a small piece of paper from his pocket and laid it on the table. A crayon drawing of a rocket flying through stars. In the corner it said, "To Uncle Elon, Maya." "This drawing," he said, almost whispering, "gave me more than any report ever has." The next day, Elon announced a new initiative, Aurora Labs, a network of creative science centers planted in small towns, under-resourced schools, and communities lacking access to education. No expensive labs, no touchscreen smartboards, just simple materials, a long table, some practical toolkits, and an adult who knows how to listen. The first Aurora Lab was set up in the outskirts of Sacramento. An old classroom was cleaned out, repainted by Tesla engineers. Elon personally assembled the wooden tables, fixed the lights, and taped up posters of Mars, the moon, and the solar system on the walls. No press, no ribbon-cutting ceremony, only students and local teachers. Elon stayed for the first 3 days. Each day he attended like a student, sitting beside 10-year-olds tightening screws, attaching motors, building water rockets. When a girl named June said, "I think the universe sounds lonely, too far for anyone to call back," Elon looked at her and replied, "That's why we need to call out first." Soon after, a second Aurora Lab opened in a southern town, then in the Northeast, then in the Colorado mountains. But every site followed one rule: never celebrate the donor, only celebrate the kids who dare to dream. At the same time, Elon began visiting old factories, once praised as models of efficiency. He walked through assembly lines without speaking, just observing. 3 weeks later, he made a shocking announcement. Reduce factory workers' hours by 1 hour per day. No cut in pay. An hour to get home early. An hour to see your child. An hour to hear your own voice again. Critics were skeptical, but attrition rates dropped. Engagement went up. In an internal town hall, Elon said, "We can't expect to create products that change the world using people who are losing themselves a little more every day." He wrote a memo to the entire organization. "We misunderstood productivity. More isn't always better. True growth happens when people wake up and want to go somewhere they feel alive, not just employed." In strategic meetings, Elon no longer asked about next quarter's revenue. He asked, "Are we making something a child would tape to their bedroom wall?" Those who once called him a tech genius now labeled him an eccentric leader. But those same people, months later, quietly began adopting his policies, because results started speaking for him. One autumn evening, Elon sat alone in his office. In front of him was the once blank book, now filled cover to cover. He didn't add anything new, but he flipped through it as if rereading every lesson. Connection, purpose, community, balance, joy, and finally, time. Not time to manage, time to be present. Beside him was an email from a small school in Arizona. A teacher had written, "A student named Leo gave his first class presentation. He said, 'I don't need to be good at speaking. I just need someone to listen. Elon didn't reply, but he printed the email and taped it inside his cabinet door, a place only he saw every morning. Once, in a private gathering of major tech founders, someone asked him, "Why did you change so much? What did you find in that little town?" Elon looked into his cup of cold tea, then quietly replied, "I found a version of myself I had forgotten existed." That morning, Elon woke not to an alarm, nor to any calls, just sunlight filtering through thin curtains and the soft chirping of sparrows on the porch. Like every other day, he was still in that villa, still surrounded by technology, still running billion-dollar decisions. But something had changed. He was no longer in a rush. That morning, while tidying the drawer of his desk, he found something familiar that had been tucked away. Maya's hand-drawn card, with her clumsy yet certain handwriting. "Don't forget me, and don't forget to smile." Elon smiled, and then he realized it had been a year since he left Willow Creek. No invitation, no reminder. But something inside him urged him to return, not to find something new, but to say thank you, like a son quietly returning to place his hand on the old door that once led him back to life. He told no one, no assistant, no press. He simply packed a few things in his backpack: the notebook, the old mirror, the paper rocket, tomato seeds, and the once blank book, now full, but still with him. As he drove toward Willow Creek, a light rain began to fall. Not pouring, just a fine mist, like gauze draped over everything. Just like the first time he came. But this time, he didn't feel alone. The town emerged, unchanged in most ways. Brown-tiled roofs, wooden shop fronts, the small square, the ancient tree at the intersection, the gray stone library. But the space felt closer now, no longer strange, no longer distant. Everything belonged. Finley was the first person he saw. Same faded sweater, same calm gestures. They didn't greet each other with, "You're back," only with a look, understanding without the need to say it aloud. "Time for a cup of tea?" Finley asked. "Always," Elon replied. Inside the library, the wooden table was in the same place, the window still open to soft yellow light, and on the shelf, the copy of Foundation that Elon had once borrowed was now back in its place. "I finished the book," Elon said, "but it feels like it's still not over." Finley didn't answer right away. He poured tea, then asked gently, "So which page do you plan to write next?" Elon looked at the book, once empty, now full of words, experiences, and the themes that had emerged during his journey. Connection, purpose, community, balance, joy, time. But the final page still had a small empty space, blank, no closing line. He was still for a moment, then picked up the pen. His hand didn't shake, but he wrote slowly as if carving into stone, "And presence, the kind that doesn't need to be measured, counted, or saved, just to be here, now with one another." He set the pen down, took a long breath. Not from exhaustion, from release. Finally, he understood. It's not grand revelations that change a person, but the small things, done repeatedly with awareness, that bring us home to ourselves. Before leaving Willow Creek once more, Elon visited everyone. Serena was repainting a new night sky. Maya, now learning basic coding, was building a model solar system inside a shoebox. Quinn was fixing a neighbor's roof, this time with his son helping. Leah was mapping constellations for the next festival. Leo had become a mentor to younger science students. Ezra had planted a row of tomatoes next to the old church. No one greeted him as a celebrity. They welcomed him like someone familiar, someone who belonged. As he was about to leave, Maya slipped a small stone into his hand, carved with the word "here." "So when you're in the noisy places," she said, "you'll remember you were once still." Elon said nothing, but he held that stone the entire ride home. Back in the old world, Silicon Valley, board meetings, AI summits, rockets roaring skyward, Elon was still Elon Musk. But now he was present. When dining with his children, he left his phone in another room. When in meetings, he listened before challenging. When tired, he rested, without excuses, without guilt. When speaking, he looked into people's eyes. When working, he remembered the kids building dreams with tape and belief. The once blank book, now full, was kept in an oak glass case, not for display, but as a reminder. And whenever someone came into his office seeking answers, Elon would invite them to sit, pour a cup of tea, and ask, "When you were little, what was the thing you loved most?" Elon Musk in the blank book is not just the story of a man rediscovering himself. It is the story of all of us. Those of us who have been running, proving, striving, until one day we realize that happiness isn't a destination. It is the moment we stop and show up, truly, for someone else or for ourselves. And perhaps the most surprising thing isn't about Elon Musk. It's that this story could also be yours. Maybe you don't run a tech empire or have billions to trade, but maybe, just maybe, you've also gone too far and forgotten why you began. Maybe you too have missed a birthday, a beautiful afternoon, or a hug because there was too much to do. And maybe, like Elon, you don't need a new plan. You just need to stop long enough to remember what you've dropped and where. If the blank book has one message, it is this: we don't write to record life. We write to begin truly living. If this story resonated with something inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might just need a gentle reminder. Because for them, it might not just be a video, but a call to come home. Thank you for staying until the end. We'll see you on the next journey, where we won't just hear a story, we'll begin rewriting our own.